The champagne bubbles caught the afternoon light just right as I watched my granddaughter laugh with him across the garden. Something in the way he touched her arm, too possessive, too calculated, made my chest tighten. I'd built my fortune on reading people. And this young man? He was a book I'd read before, in boardrooms, in failed partnerships, in the eyes of men who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. Beautiful property you have here, Mr. Harrison. His voice came from directly behind me, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne, too expensive for someone who claimed to be a struggling artist. I turned slowly, keeping my bourbon steady in my hand. Thank you, Blake. I gave him the smile I reserved for people I didn't trust. Adrian speaks highly of you. She's special. He moved to stand beside me, his eyes scanning the estate grounds where about 40 of our family and close friends had gathered for what was supposed to be a celebration of my granddaughter's 25th birthday. She told me you started with nothing, built all this from scratch. She talks too much about family business, I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. Blake laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Family's important. That's actually something I wanted to discuss with you privately. Got a moment? Every instinct I'd honed over 4 decades in business screamed at me to walk away. But Adrian was my only granddaughter, the daughter of my late son. And if this man was about to show his true colors, better I see them now than after he'd wormed his way deeper into our lives. The study, I said. 5 minutes. I'd told Adrian's mother, my daughter-in-law Catherine, that I didn't like him the first time they'd brought him to Sunday dinner 3 months ago. Too smooth, I'd said. Too interested in the wrong things. Catherine had given me that look, the one that said I was being overprotective again, that I needed to let Adrian make her own choices. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just a paranoid old man who'd spent too long watching for threats in every shadow. But as I led Blake through the French doors and into my study, I made sure the security system was set to record. Old habits. He closed the door behind us with a soft click that seemed too deliberate. When he turned back to me, the charming mask had slipped. Beautiful family you have, he said, moving to my desk where photos sat in silver frames. Adrian, Catherine, your late son Robert. Tragic. What happened to him? Car accident, wasn't it? Get to the point, Blake. Right. Business. You're a businessman. You appreciate directness. He picked up a crystal paperweight, turning it in his hands like he owned it. I know about the Thornhill deal. The bourbon in my glass suddenly felt heavy. The Thornhill deal. A land acquisition I'd made 20 years ago, buying property that turned out to have some environmental complications we'd had to clean up quietly. Everything legal, everything handled through lawyers and proper channels, but messy enough that if someone wanted to twist the narrative, make it look worse than it was. The Thornhill deal was perfectly legal and properly documented, I said evenly. Sure. But you know how things look these days. Social media, investigative journalists looking for their big break, wealthy businessmen cuts corners, poisons local water supply. He set down the paperweight with a thunk. Doesn't matter if it's true. The accusation alone would destroy your reputation. And Adrian's career, she's applying to law school, right? Stanford? Harvard? Having a grandfather facing environmental crime allegations might complicate things. My hand tightened on the glass. What do you want? $3 million. He said it like he was ordering coffee. Transferred to an offshore account I'll provide details for. You've got 72 hours. Don't transfer it. And I go to the press with everything I've discovered about Thornhill. I've already got a journalist friend interested. The story writes itself. Wealthy land developer ruins wetlands, covers it up for decades, continues to profit while families nearby suffer health issues. You're blackmailing me at my granddaughter's birthday party? I'm giving you a business proposition. You understand business. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. And Marcus? Don't think about trying to expose me to Adrienne. I've been careful. She loves me. She'll believe me over you, the overprotective grandfather who never approved of anyone she dated. You make a scene, try to paint me as the bad guy, and I go nuclear with the Thornhill story anyway. You pay, I disappear quietly. Tell Adrian I got a gallery opportunity in Paris or something. She'll be hurt, but she'll get over it. Everyone wins. He left the study with that same calculated casualness he'd arrived with. Through the window, I watched him return to the garden party, drape his arm around Adrian's shoulders, kiss her temple. She beamed up at him with the kind of trust that made my chest ache. I'd lost my son 5 years ago. I'd be damned if I let some con artist destroy my granddaughter's life too. The bourbon went down smooth as I made my first call. Jerry Thornton had been my private investigator for 15 years, handling everything from employee background checks to due diligence on business acquisitions. If there was dirt to find on Blake Morrison, if that was even his real name, Jerry would find it. "Marcus, it's Sunday evening," Jerry answered, his voice carrying that perpetual gravelly exhaustion of a man who'd seen too much. "I need a full background on someone. Deep dive. Everything." I gave him Blake's name, the few details I knew. "And Jerry? I need it fast. 72 hours fast. That'll cost extra." "I don't care what it costs." I heard the shift in his tone, professional curiosity kicking in. "What kind of trouble are we talking about?" "The kind that threatens family. I'll have something for you by tomorrow night." The party continued outside my window. Catherine had organized a garden dinner, white lights strung between the old oak trees, tables decorated with flowers from Adrian's favorite colors. My granddaughter looked radiant in her blue dress, surrounded by cousins and friends. Blake played his part perfectly attentive but not overbearing, charming everyone from Adrian's college roommates to her elderly great-aunt Dolores. I joined them for dinner, played the role of proud grandfather, gave a toast about Adrian's future and how proud her father would have been. The whole time, I felt Blake's eyes on me, a slight smirk playing at his lips. He was confident, too confident. That night, after the last guests had left and Adrian had gone home with Catherine, I sat in my study with the security footage from earlier. I watched Blake's performance on repeat, studied the micro-expressions, the way his eyes had calculated everything in the room before he'd even opened his mouth. The phone rang at 11. "Jerry, found something already," he said without preamble. "Blake Morrison is not his real name. It's Brandon Mitchell. And Marcus? This guy's a pro. He's done this before." My stomach dropped. "How many times?" "That I can confirm? 4. All older men with granddaughters or daughters, all wealthy. Same pattern poses as the boyfriend, gets close to the family, researches for any skeleton in the closet he can exploit. Usually targets men who had successful businesses with any kind of questionable past dealing. Environmental issues, labor disputes, financial irregularities, anything that could be twisted into a scandal. And the women? The granddaughters? As far as I can tell, he doesn't physically harm them. But the psychological damage? 2 of them ended up in therapy. One of the families broke apart over it. The grandfather paid. The granddaughter found out later what really happened, blamed him for not telling her. Last I heard, they hadn't spoken in 3 years. I closed my eyes, fighting back the rage. What happened to this Brandon Mitchell? Was he arrested? Charges were filed twice. Both times, he disappeared before trial. He's good at covering his tracks, uses different identities, always has exit strategies. The FBI has a file on him, but he's slippery. No permanent address, probably multiple passports. Send me everything you've got. Marcus, listen to me. Guys like this, they're dangerous when cornered. You need to involve law enforcement. I will, after I get what I need. I spent the rest of the night reading through Jerry's initial report. Brandon Mitchell, real age 34, had a history that read like a playbook for manipulation. Raised in foster care, high IQ, early arrests for fraud and identity theft, learned to use his looks and charm as weapons. The photos Jerry had uncovered showed him with different women, different names, different backgrounds he'd invented. But there was something else in the file that caught my attention. 3 years ago, one of his victims, a retired judge named Harold Chen, had tried to catch Brandon in a sting operation. It had failed because Brandon had somehow been tipped off, but Chen had recorded everything, including Brandon's threats. The recordings hadn't been admissible in court due to some technicality, but they'd been enough to get the FBI interested. I called Jerry back. "I need you to reach out to Harold Chen, find out everything about his sting operation. What worked, what didn't, why Brandon got away. Marcus. And I need a forensic accountant to dig into the Thornhill deal. Every document, every permit, every environmental test. I want to know exactly what Brandon thinks he has on me, and whether any of it could actually stick. By Monday morning, I had a plan. But first, I had to deal with the immediate problem Adrian couldn't know. If she confronted Blake, if he suspected I was onto him, he'd either run or accelerate his timeline. I needed him confident, convinced he had me cornered. Adrian called that afternoon, her voice bright with happiness. "Papa, thank you for yesterday. It meant so much to have everyone there. It was a beautiful party, sweetheart. Blake had such a good time, too. He really wants to get to know you better. He mentioned you two talked in the study." My heart hammered. "Just small talk, getting to know each other. He said you seemed concerned about something. Are you okay? Is something wrong with the business?" Smart. He was already setting up his narrative, making sure Adrian would remember me acting strangely, would later believe I'd been hiding something. "Everything's fine, honey. Just an old man's worry. You know how I am." "I do," she laughed, and it hurt because I could hear how happy she was. "Blake says I should give you more credit, that you're not as overprotective as I think, that you just care." Manipulation wrapped in compliments. Classic. He's right. I do care. About you, always. After we hung up, I stared at my phone, at the last photo I had of her with her father, my son Robert, taken 6 months before the accident that took him. He'd been teaching her to drive his old Mustang, both of them laughing, covered in car wash soap. Robert had always been a better judge of character than me. He'd inherited his mother's warmth, her ability to see the good in people. But he'd also trusted me to protect our family when he couldn't. I wouldn't fail him. Not on this. Jerry's full report arrived Monday evening by encrypted email. Brandon Mitchell had extracted a total of $8 million from his previous victims. The pattern was always the same: research the target, identify a vulnerability, pose as someone trustworthy to gain access, then threaten exposure. Most victims paid because the threat wasn't just to their reputation, but to their families. The forensic accountant's report came next. The Thornhill deal was clean. Every permit in order, every environmental remediation, properly documented and filed with the EPA. Yes, there had been contamination when we'd purchased the land. That's why we'd gotten it at a discount, but we'd cleaned it up properly, even gone beyond what was required. Any journalist who actually looked at the facts would find nothing. But Brandon didn't need facts. He needed the threat to seem credible enough that I'd pay rather than risk fighting it in the court of public opinion. Tuesday morning, Brandon called my cell phone. I almost admired the nerve, using my private number like we were old friends. "Mr. Harrison, just checking in. Clock's ticking. 48 hours left." "I'm working on it," I said, keeping my voice strained, worried. $3 million isn't exactly pocket change. I need to move some assets around. I'm sure a man of your resources can figure it out. A pause. "How's Adrian?" "She's been texting me about looking at apartments together. Sweet girl. Really sees a future with me." The threat was implicit. Pay or I destroy her emotionally too. "I'll have the money," I said. "Wednesday evening. I'll need account information. I'll text it to you." He hung up, satisfied. I immediately called Jerry. "Tell me you found Harold Chen." "Better. He wants to help. He's been waiting for a chance to nail this guy." "And Marcus? The FBI's interested. They've been building a case against Brandon for interstate fraud and wire fraud. They just needed someone willing to cooperate fully." By Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting in a conference room with 2 FBI agents, Special Agent Lisa Torres and Special Agent David Kim. They were younger than I expected, probably in their 30s, but they knew their case file inside and out. "Mr. Harrison, we appreciate you coming forward," Agent Torres said, laying out photos of Brandon's previous victims. Brandon Mitchell, also known as Blake Morrison, Derek Walsh, and at least 6 other aliases, has been operating this scheme for nearly a decade. We've been trying to catch him in the act, but he's extremely careful. "What do you need from me?" Agent Kim leaned forward. "We need you to continue the transaction as planned, but with modifications. We'll monitor everything: calls, texts, the money transfer. When he makes contact to confirm receipt of funds, we move in. But Mr. Harrison, you need to understand there's risk. If he suspects anything, he'll run. He's done it before. What about Adrian? My granddaughter can't know about this until it's over. Agent Torres nodded. We understand. The less she knows, the more naturally she'll act. But after we arrest him, she'll need support. This will be traumatic. I'll handle that, I said. Just catch him. We spent the next 6 hours going over every detail. The FBI would monitor my accounts, would track the transfer in real time. They'd coordinate with Interpol in case Brandon tried to flee internationally. Most importantly, they'd be there when he came to collect his next payment, because men like Brandon never stopped at one payday. Wednesday arrived with the kind of crystal-clear autumn sky that made everything feel surreal. I went through my morning routine, coffee on the back terrace, reading the financial news, checking in with my business managers. Normal. Everything had to look normal. The text came at noon. Account number, redacted. Routing, redacted. Transfer by 6 p.m., or tomorrow's headlines will be interesting. I forwarded it to Agent Torres, then made the transfer through my bank. $3 million. Routed through the systems the FBI had set up to track it. Within seconds, I got confirmation the money was moving, and the FBI was watching every step. At 6:15 p.m., my phone rang. Brandon. Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Harrison. His voice was smug, victorious. The money's received. I'll be out of Adrian's life by the weekend. Clean break. She'll cry for a bit, but she's young. She'll find someone else. And the Thornhill information. What information? I'm an artist, not a journalist. I don't know anything about environmental crimes. He laughed. Enjoy your reputation, old man. You paid for it. He hung up. I sat in my study, looking at my phone, wondering if it had worked, if the FBI had been able to trace the transfer fast enough. If my phone buzzed, a text from Agent Torres. Got him. Attempting to board a flight to Vancouver. We're moving in now. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The next call was harder. Catherine answered on the second ring. Marcus? Is everything all right? Where's Adrian? At work. Why? What's wrong? Bring her to the house. Right now. Both of you. There's something she needs to hear, and it has to be from me. The drive from Catherine's house to my estate took 30 minutes. It felt like hours. I paced my study, rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd tell my granddaughter that the man she loved, the man she'd been planning a future with, was a criminal who'd been using her to get to me. When they arrived, Adrian's face was already pale with worry. Papa? What's happened? Mom wouldn't tell me anything. Sit down, sweetheart. You're scaring me. Catherine took her daughter's hand, gave me a look that said, whatever I was about to say, it better be good. I told them everything. Blake's real name, his history, the blackmail, the FBI, the arrest that had happened less than 2 hours ago. I watched Adrian's face cycle through disbelief, denial, anger, and finally, devastating comprehension. No, she whispered. No, that's not. Blake wouldn't. I have the FBI reports right here. I handed her the folder. Adrian, I'm so sorry. She opened the folder with shaking hands, started reading. Catherine moved closer, reading over her shoulder. I watched my granddaughter's world shatter in real time, watched the moment she understood that the past 3 months had been a lie, that every moment she'd cherished had been calculated, that the man who'd told her he loved her had been planning to exploit her family the entire time. He never loved me, she said finally, her voice hollow. It was all fake, every word, every moment. He was just using me to get to you. Adrian, did he even like me? Was there anything real? She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. How could I not see it? How could I be so stupid? You're not stupid. Catherine pulled her daughter into her arms. You trusted someone. That's not stupid. That's human. Your father would have been fooled too, I added quietly. This man is a professional. He's done this before to people much more cynical than you. But you saw through him. Adrian's eyes met mine. From the beginning. That's why you didn't like him. I've had more practice recognizing predators. And I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. If you'd confronted him, he would have run. She was quiet for a long moment, her mother holding her, both of them processing. Then, the Thornhill deal. Was any of it true? Did you really cover something up? No. I handed her the forensic accountant's report. Everything was properly handled, properly documented. He was counting on me being too afraid of the accusation to call his bluff. That's how these cons work. They bet on fear and shame, keeping people quiet. Adrian read through the report, her tears slowing. When she looked up again, something had shifted in her expression. Still hurt, still betrayed, but also angry. Good. Anger was better than self-blame. What happens to him now? He's been arrested on multiple federal charges: wire fraud, interstate fraud, extortion. The FBI says with his history and the evidence they've gathered, he's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. Good. She said it with venom I'd never heard from her before. I hope he rots. Catherine stayed with Adrian that night, both of them in the guest rooms upstairs. I heard them talking late into the night, mother and daughter processing trauma together. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on my study door. Adrian stood there in her pajamas, looking younger than her 25 years. Can we talk? Of course, sweetheart. She came in, sat in the leather chair across from my desk, the same chair her father used to sit in when he was young, coming to me with problems he needed help solving. I keep thinking about all the times you warned me, she said. About him, about being careful, about how you didn't trust him, and I dismissed you. I thought you were being overprotective, that you couldn't let go of Dad's death, that you saw danger everywhere. You weren't wrong, I admitted. I am overprotective. I do see danger everywhere. Losing your father made me paranoid about losing you too. But this time you were right. I wish I hadn't been. She was quiet for a moment, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. He told me you'd try to turn me against him. He said older men like you, who'd lost their sons, sometimes became controlling with their granddaughters. That I needed to be independent, make my own choices. And I believed him. I thought you were the problem. That's how he isolated you. Classic manipulation. I should have known. I'm applying to law school. I've studied psychology, criminal behavior, but when it was happening to me, I couldn't see it. Why couldn't I see it? Because you're not suspicious by nature. Because you inherited your father's ability to see the good in people. And that's not a weakness, Adrian. Don't let this man turn you cynical. How do I trust anyone again? How do I know if someone actually likes me or if they're just using me to get to you? It was the question I'd been dreading, the one I didn't have a good answer for. Because the truth was, being wealthy came with a permanent question mark over every relationship. Were they here for you or your money? Did they love you or your lifestyle? You learn to trust your instincts, I said finally. You ask questions. You watch for red flags. You don't ignore that voice in your head that says something's off. And you have people in your life, your mother, me, friends who knew you before you had anything who can give you reality checks. Will you? She asked. Give me reality checks? Even if I get mad at you for it? Every single time. She nodded, seemed to find some comfort in that. The FBI agent, Torres? She gave me her card. Said I might want to testify at his trial, that it could help give me closure, but also that I didn't have to if it was too painful. What do you think you want to do? I want to testify. The anger was back in her voice, righteous and fierce. I want him to see me walk into that courtroom and tell everyone what he did. I want those other women, his other victims, to know they weren't alone, that someone finally stood up to him. Pride swelled in my chest. Your father would be so proud of you right now. Yeah? Her voice cracked. I don't feel very strong. Strength isn't about not being hurt. It's about what you do after. She stood up, came around the desk, and hugged me, something she hadn't done since she was a little girl. I held my granddaughter and thought about Robert, about how much he'd loved her, about how he'd made me promise to protect her if anything ever happened to him. I kept my promise, I whispered, not sure if I was talking to Adrian or to my son's memory. The trial took 8 months to get to court. Brandon Mitchell, facing overwhelming evidence and multiple victims willing to testify, tried to make a deal. The FBI refused. They wanted him off the streets permanently. I sat in the courtroom gallery the day Adrian testified. She wore a navy suit, her hair pulled back, looking every inch the law student she'd become. When it was her turn, she walked to the stand with her head high, met Brandon's eyes without flinching. Did you love the defendant? The prosecutor asked. I thought I did, Adrian answered, her voice steady. But love requires honesty and respect. Brandon Mitchell is incapable of both. He's a predator who targets people's deepest vulnerabilities, their trust, their family bonds, their fear of scandal. He didn't love me. He used me. And he needs to be held accountable, so he can never do this to anyone else. Brandon stared at her the whole time, his charming mask completely gone, replaced by cold calculation. When Adrian stepped down, she didn't look back at him once. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole for at least 15. Outside the courthouse, Adrian was swarmed by reporters. She handled them with grace, giving a prepared statement about how victims of financial and emotional manipulation deserved support and protection, how she was grateful to the FBI and her family for believing her. Catherine and I stood back, watching her, and I felt my daughter-in-law's hand find mine. Robert would be so proud, she said quietly. He'd be proud of both of you. Thank you, Marcus, for protecting her, for not giving up even when we thought you were being paranoid. I'll always be paranoid when it comes to you two. It's part of my charm. She laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from her in months. Your very limited charm. That evening, the three of us had dinner at the estate. Just family. No press, no lawyers, no FBI agents. Adrian told us about her law school applications, about how this experience had made her want to specialize in white-collar crime prosecution. I want to catch people like Brandon, she said, spearing a piece of asparagus with more force than necessary. I want to make sure other families don't go through what we did. You'll be brilliant at it, I told her. Later, as the sun set over the garden, where we'd celebrated her birthday 9 months earlier, Adrian and I stood on the terrace, watching the light fade. Papa, can I ask you something? Anything. Why didn't you just pay him? $3 million, you have that. You could have made him go away quietly, protected me from ever knowing the truth. Why risk everything to expose him? I considered the question, understanding what she was really asking. Why hadn't I chosen the path of least resistance? Why had I put her through the pain of discovery? Because paying him would have taught you the wrong lesson, I said finally. It would have told you that sometimes the right thing to do is hide, pay off problems, let predators go free as long as they leave you alone. But that's not how we protect family. We protect family by standing up to people who threaten them, by refusing to be victims, by making sure they can never hurt anyone else. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, she leaned against me, my granddaughter who'd survived heartbreak and betrayal, and come out stronger. I'm glad you're paranoid. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. 3 years later, I attended Adrian's law school graduation. She'd graduated top of her class, had already accepted a position with the FBI's financial crimes unit. As I watched her walk across that stage, accept her diploma with her mother cheering beside her, I thought about promises kept and legacies passed down. That evening, at the celebration dinner, Adrian introduced me to someone, a young public defender named James, who she'd been seeing for 6 months. He was earnest and awkward, talked too much when he was nervous, and had absolutely nothing to gain from my money or connections, because he'd sworn a life of public service. I liked him immediately, but I still had Jerry run a background check, just in case, because you can't be too careful when it comes to family. And some lessons, once learned, you never forget.